Hi, my name is Jared Mello, and this is another episode of Mello Mentoring. If you enjoy videos about psychology, mental health, self-improvement, supplements, please give me a subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when I come up with more videos. And I have finally submitted my first podcast to Apple for approval, and so you'll be able to find the first episode of the Everything Eccentric Podcast first on Apple, and then on Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc., and all the other platforms near you. And thanks for your patience on that. In this video, I want to talk about an issue I think a lot of people struggle with, especially people who have to deal with it, and it's bipolar and relationships. And I'm going to be speaking about this from the bipolar point of view. Now, I have bipolar 2. It's one of my diagnoses, and relationships can absolutely be tough. I'm going to go over some of the reasons why that is. First of all, someone who's bipolar, we're often very sensitive. And when someone new comes into our life, we really can be swept away if we like the person on this magical feeling. And the prerequisite of any good relationship is to be happy and independent on our own, which I usually am. But I'm just coming out of something right now where I can't deny I feel better when I'm with someone else. I can feel better and get swept up, and life just seems more full of possibilities. And this happens because another person can indeed bring on a form of mania or hypomania. And this is really important to figure out for ourselves because we got to try to prevent against it as much as possible without being robots. And it can be pretty tough. Boundaries can extremely be tough when you're getting caught up in someone and it feels so good you don't want to take a step back and think rationally and say, uh-oh, here's a red flag. Uh-oh, this person has lied to me. Uh-oh, maybe it's not as good as it feels. And it can be pretty difficult to do so, especially when we can get caught up in these feelings. Now, the same can also be true for people who are dating someone who is bipolar. In that circumstance, I would say the best thing to do is have honest communication. And in all of these instances, the person who has the mood disorder, they got to be treated first for this to even begin to have a possibility of working, right? So whether you're taking supplements or prescription medications, you got to be being treated for your mood disorder. And even then, once we're treated, I know for me, even though I'm treated, it doesn't mean I'm immune to the mood swings a relationship can bring. And so just as the great sides of a relationship can make me a little hypomanic, when things aren't going well, that can also really rock my world too. And they say this is caused from people who have a weaker sense of self. And I think for me, it's just, I gotta own the fact I'm pretty sensitive to a lot of energies. And one of the most powerful energies in the world are other people. And I have all sorts of hobbies and things I like to do. And the fact of the matter is, there's only one thing that comes close to what relationships do for me, and that's singing. Other than that, they do kind of pale in comparison, and my life can seem a little more drab, especially if something hasn't worked out with a person. So in this recent circumstance I've been through, right, things were amazing for 2 to 3 months until there were some complications in this person's life. And then, almost out of nowhere, just stopped talking. And maybe I could have done a little better and had better boundaries when I started to realize that life was complicated for this person. But you don't want to do that when, especially since I'd never gotten along with anyone as well as I'd gotten along with this person. And so it makes it even more tough. But rationally speaking, I would tell someone, a friend of mine or someone else, what the situation was, and they would say, yeah, that's not too good, you should probably walk away. But I also want to continue to speak about, in the beginning, how do we prevent against this mania occurring, this hypomania, for another person? Because it only happens when I really like someone. If I don't like someone, this manic feeling does not ever occur. But when I actually like someone, it most likely does occur. And you get that magical feeling, you get the butterflies. I think as people with bipolar, we experience that a little more intensely, I bet, than other people who do not have the same issues. So we need to take precautions that maybe other people don't have to take. And that's one, we've really got to come back to being independent as opposed to being swept up in another person. And this is similar to being codependent, right, where we get swept up in the energies of someone else and our sense of self becomes lost. So we really need to make sure that we come back to our independence, our emotional independence, and we still have things in our own life that are bringing us happiness and joy. We're not neglecting our friends, we're not neglecting our hobbies or our jobs. We still have stuff that makes us happy. Now yet, I'm saying all this, and I've never quite been able to do it completely, right? And maybe that could be a reason why I am still single, but part of me thinks about the falling in love kind of fairy tale saying, why should I deprive myself of that? But at the same point, I think, well, if you've been doing it your way now for almost 34 years, and you have these issues you have to deal with, I'm not going to complain about it, it's just the hand I was dealt. Perhaps I gotta do things a little bit differently, and I have to really remember the logical side of my brain, the rational side, as opposed to the emotional part. Because the emotional part can absolutely lead me astray. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is we really have a responsibility to take care of ourselves. And in relationships, it absolutely is, it's really hard. It's really hard to maintain our independence, to not get caught up in other people's energies, whether it's good energies or bad energies, the ups and downs. It's absolutely tough. And if you're the person who does not have bipolar and you're dating someone who is, or you're married to someone who is, the communication part is huge. You better be communicating with one another. You better be comfortable telling each other the truth and being honest with one another. And for the person who does not have a mood disorder, you really got to ask yourself, as long as the bad is not outweighing the good, you can have a shot at a healthy, happy relationship. But if you look at all the pros and the cons, and you add them all up, and you see that, hey, there's a lot more cons here than pros, maybe that's a relationship you might want to step away from. Because once you've been with someone for a little while, it usually takes around a year or so to kind of really figure out what a person's like. And once you've realized what they're like, you have an honest assessment you have to give yourself. Do I want to be with this person? Am I happy with this person? Do I see my life being productive and healthy with this person? Do we have similar values? Do we have share a vision of the future? Are our good times outweighing our bad times? Those are the kind of things that have to be discussed. And hey, you shouldn't feel guilty if you walk away, if you realize the cons are more than the pros. But if the pros are more than the cons, you're going to have to put the work in too. It's a mutual thing where if you love one another, you're going to be there for one another. And as long as the pros are more than the cons, you should stick it out. But in my case, I'm not even sure what's going to happen in this one yet, but I'm just taking this time right now to really kind of focus backward on myself again and focus on boundaries, protecting my energies, guarding my heart, so to speak, and trying to just get back on track with all of my goals and get happiness from just my own life again. Because what often happens to me in relationships is the relationship becomes my biggest source of happiness and joy. And I think this is something a lot of people with mood disorders struggle from, because we're so sensitive to the energies of others, and we're just we can be good on our own, but even people who are healthy will say they can feel even better when they're with someone else. And this truth is really hard for me to navigate, because I know it can be better with someone else. Everyone says it can be. They were happy on their own, and they get to this whole new level with another person. But we have to be ready for it, right? And we have to be honest with ourselves about our limitations, our assets, and our liabilities. And we have to take care of ourselves. We have to recognize our condition, and make sure we take care of it. We can't neglect ourselves just because we find someone else. And in fact, it's probably even more important than ever to not neglect ourselves and to take care of ourselves in a relationship, because now we could also hurt another person if we don't. So that's my little spiel on bipolar and relationships. Honesty, trust, communication, each person in the relationship doing their own part and taking care of one another, and having the ability to be independent is all very key. And if we have mood disorder ourselves, we have to take extra precaution to make sure that we're still taking care of ourselves. We're still doing what's best for us, and try to resist the temptation to unhealthily be swept away by another person. There's a line there somewhere where I think it's acceptable to a point, and then once you get past a certain point, it's perhaps not acceptable anymore. And what that point is would probably be when that woman or that man becomes the thing you look forward to most in life. That might be it. I'm not sure. It's just me speculating, or perhaps it's when we stop getting as much joy from the things we're doing in our own lives, our hobbies, our friends, our job, etc. So we have to have that happy medium somewhere. We can't just blindly go off. So that's all I have for you today in this video. Since the last video, I did get a new tattoo, which is pretty cool. I'll pop a picture of that up here. And until next time, thanks for listening to the video.